For nearly half a century, the world believed it had seen everything there was to see about Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll. His life, his music, his tragedies, and his untimely death had been dissected endlessly. Millions of fans toured his famous Graceland mansion, peering into carefully preserved rooms, gazing at glittering gold records, and laying flowers at his grave. But deep beneath the rhinestones and velvet ropes, secrets had been quietly sleeping. Secrets so personal, so haunting, they threatened to rewrite the final chapter of the Elvis Presley story. In early 2025, those secrets finally stirred. For decades, rumors had swirled about the forbidden places inside Graceland, the upstairs, the attic, and especially the basement. Places no tour guide spoke of, no souvenir map listed, and no camera was ever allowed to capture. The official reason was always the same: privacy, respect for the family. But those who worked behind the scenes knew a different truth. There were rooms deliberately locked, sections sealed tight, and stories no one dared to tell. Visitors walking through the mansion sensed it too, that quiet, unspoken tension. While crowds admired Elvis's rhinestone jumpsuits and marveled at his fleet of Cadillacs, their eyes always drifted upward to the roped-off staircase or down hallways marked "Staff Only." What lay beyond those forbidden doors? Even world leaders and celebrities who toured Graceland weren't permitted past certain thresholds. Tour guides recited the same practiced line: the upstairs remains private, out of respect for the Presley family. But whispers among longtime employees hinted at something stranger. Some claimed lights would flicker on in rooms that had no power. Others swore they heard old music drifting from the basement late at night when no one was there. A few even told of seeing shadowy figures moving past attic windows long after the gates were locked. In Memphis, dive bars and fan conventions, conspiracy theories took on a life of their own. Was it a cover-up for priceless relics, or something darker? Some believed Elvis himself had left instructions to keep those places sealed, afraid of what might one day be found. Others speculated about secret recording, lost confessions, or even an elaborate escape plan. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain: the most haunted corners of Graceland weren't filled with ghosts, but with secrets. Then, in a cold January morning of 2025, it all began to unravel. Graceland officials quietly announced a routine preservation project. Structural maintenance, they said. Nothing unusual, just another round of upkeep for the legendary mansion. But behind those carefully chosen words, something extraordinary was brewing. For this wasn't a job for the usual staff or everyday contractors. Behind closed doors, a private team was assembled in complete secrecy. Not your average archivists or museum workers. These were specialists in historical preservation, forensic document analysis, and high-security asset recovery. Each one hand-picked, sworn to absolute silence under ironclad legal agreements. Even their arrival at Graceland was discreet. No fanfare, no press releases. Vans with unmarked logos pulled through the back gates in the dead of night. Their occupants briefed on the gravity of what they were about to uncover. Advanced scanning equipment, archival containment units, and custom environmental controls were wheeled inside, raising eyebrows among even the most seasoned estate staff. For the first time in nearly half a century, the locks on the basement and attic doors would turn. Spaces that hadn't seen a breath of fresh air since August 16, 1977, the day Elvis Presley's voice fell silent. Some within the team whispered about what they might find: lost recordings, personal journals, maybe even the long-rumored confession tapes Elvis reportedly made in his final days. Others were more superstitious, half-joking about the mansion's so-called bad energy and strange incidents in the past. No one outside that elite circle knew the real reason behind the sudden urgency. But one thing was certain: this wasn't routine preservation. This was the unsealing of a vault of memory, mystery, and perhaps a truth too dangerous to leave buried. It started with the basement. For years, fans had whispered about what lay beneath Graceland's famous jungle room, past the glittering Hall of Gold records, and down a narrow staircase hidden behind a false wall. Insiders knew the basement existed, but even longtime staff avoided it. It wasn't just off-limits. It was erased from official plans. No tours, no photographs, no exceptions. When the team descended the creaky stairs for the first time in 48 years, the air was thick with mildew and memory. Dust clung to faded wallpaper, and the silence wasn't ordinary silence. It was a weight, a pressure, as if the house itself was holding its breath. A single bare bulb swung from a frayed cord, revealing furniture cloaked in dust-covered sheets. A vintage turntable with a warped record, and a pair of Elvis's signature sunglasses resting on a crushed velvet cushion. But the most disturbing discovery was a door, slightly ajar, as if waiting. And then, movement. Was it an animal? A squatter? Or something far more impossible? What they found left even the seasoned team speechless. The first room they entered was the legendary TV room, a name whispered in biographies and late-night fan forums, but one no visitor had ever seen with their own eyes. And when the preservation team finally stepped inside, it wasn't some dusty, forgotten relic or a carefully staged reconstruction for tourists. It was untouched, untamed. It felt as though Elvis himself had merely stepped out to grab a sandwich and would be back any moment to settle into his favorite spot on the couch. 3 vintage television sets sat side by side, lined up like sentinels facing a low-slung velvety couch, their screens still glowing faintly with a strange, otherworldly static. The air hummed with a tension that seemed to hum along with it. In the 1960s and 70s, having one television was a luxury, but Elvis, ever the king, had insisted on 3. He wanted to watch all the evening newscasts at once, switching between networks to stay ahead of the headline. Friends and insiders recalled how he'd shout at the screens, flipping through channels, commenting on politics, sports, and celebrity gossip, like a man obsessed with knowing everything happening in the world outside his walls. The room itself was pure Presley. Bold black and yellow walls, a mirrored ceiling that gave it an almost nightclub feel, shag carpeting thick enough to swallow your shoes, and along one wall, a jagged lightning bolt stretching across like a declaration of power. It was a direct homage to Elvis's personal motto, TCB, taking care of business, in a flash. That symbol, once embroidered on the backs of his stage jumpsuits and painted on the tail of his private jet, was now immortalized on the very walls of his private sanctuary. Old magazines lay in scattered piles, their covers yellowed with age. Half-empty soda bottles gathered dust beside overflowing ashtrays, their contents undisturbed since the summer of 1977. On a side table sat a pair of gold-rimmed sunglasses, the very ones Elvis was known to wear during late-night marathons of his favorite detective shows. The atmosphere was so thick, so tangible, it felt as if history itself had paused in that room, waiting for the king to return and resume his reign. Magazines from the 1970s lay scattered, soda bottles gathered dust beside an ashtray, and a pair of loafers rested at the edge of the couch, forever facing those silent TV sets. As the team adjusted to the surreal quiet, a sound shattered the stillness. Not the creak of old wood or the drip of ancient pipes. These were slow, deliberate footsteps coming from beyond the far wall. The team moved cautiously into what was once Elvis's pool room, a hypnotic space with pleated multicolored fabric draping every inch of wall and ceiling in swirling blues, gold, and burnt orange. It was otherworldly, preserved in amber since 1974. The pool table stood mid-game, balls still racked. Leather chairs, cigarette packs, and custom lighting fixtures remained untouched. It was too perfect. Then, one technician spotted it, a shift in the shadows. Behind a sagging curtain and warped molding, a narrow passage led into a chamber no one had ever documented. Not on blueprints, not on tour maps, not even in the estate's private record. Lifelong staff members claimed they'd never seen it. And at the end of that low, narrow corridor was a sealed chamber marked only by dust and time. Inside were dozens of crates, sealed with brittle tape and marked with inventory codes from the late 1970s. The air was dense, watchful. Within those crates lay the artifacts of a man's inner world: books, clothes, home movies, cocktail napkin scribbles, and most notably, reel-to-reel audio tapes labeled by hand. Some were marked with dates just weeks before Elvis's death. The contents of those tapes remain a closely guarded secret. But one crew member, speaking anonymously, later claimed the first recording they played was neither a performance nor a rehearsal. It was Elvis, speaking alone into the void, as if leaving one last message, a voice no one expected to hear again. If the basement was a vault of memory, the attic was a time machine. Graceland's attic had remained sealed since 1977. Even family members, staff, and estate executives steered clear of it. The official reason was endlessly repeated to curious fans and relentless reporters: respect for Elvis's privacy. It was, they claimed, his most personal space, a place never meant for public eyes. But as the years stretched into decades, that explanation began to wear thin. The more it was left untouched, the louder the speculation grew. Fan forums and late-night radio shows buzzed with wild theories. Was there a secret love child hidden away up there? Someone the Presley family quietly supported in exchange for their silence? Some swore the attic held an escape hatch, a hidden tunnel Elvis could have used to fake his death and slip away from the unbearable pressure of fame. Others insisted it contained the proof that the king had never really died at all. In Memphis, bartenders traded ghost stories about strange shadows in the attic windows, while staff members whispered of cold drafts and flickering lights no electrician could explain. And then there were the bizarre sightings. A mysterious figure spotted on security monitors late at night, always near the attic door, vanishing before anyone could catch them. For decades, these stories remained little more than eerie campfire tales, but those who knew the mansion best, the aging staff who'd served the king himself, confessed in hushed tones that the attic wasn't just private, it was forbidden, and they hinted at one chilling fact no one liked to say aloud. The attic wasn't locked to keep people out. It was locked because of what might still be inside. In January 2025, Riley Keough, Elvis's granddaughter and the sole heir after Lisa Marie's death in 2023, made a bold decision. In the wake of a dramatic legal battle to save Graceland from a fraudulent auction attempt by a mysterious company called Nosani Investments, Riley ordered the attic opened. Archivists in white gloves ascended the narrow stairs, their footsteps echoing in the untouched space. The air was thick with decades of dust and silence. A single bulb cast a sickly light as an old brass key, kept in the Presley family since the king's death, turned with a creak. And there, in the attic's cool, dark hush, they found not chaos, not decay, but a carefully preserved vault of Elvis's most private moments. Dozens of boxes lined the walls, each labeled in his own handwriting. Tupelo, 1945, first recordings, Army Days, Hollywood, Comeback Special, Vegas, each one a chapter of his life. But one box stood out, marked simply After, and dated 1977. The archivists began documenting everything. The attic was larger than expected, stretching across the entire top floor. Dormer windows were covered with blackout curtain. A small air conditioner, long forgotten but miraculously still running, kept the space eerily cool. In the Tupelo box, they found a ragged old teddy bear named Bear, Elvis's childhood companion during the darkest days when his father was imprisoned and he and his mother scraped by with next to nothing. Gladys Presley had sewn its patches with scraps from her own clothes. The Army Days section revealed a Bible belonging to his mother. She had given it to Elvis in 1958, urging him to keep his faith during his military service. Its pages were marked with underlined verses and handwritten prayers. One passage, Psalm 23, was marked just days before his death. In Hollywood, a leather jacket from Jailhouse Rock carried a handwritten note inside. "Wear this when you need to disappear." It spoke volumes of a man suffocated by fame, desperately craving anonymity. But the most shocking find was a sealed doctor's report from 1974 marked confidential. Though its contents remain undisclosed, it reportedly warned of heart problems and urged immediate lifestyle changes. Warnings Elvis ignored. Then came the tapes. Old, dust-covered reel-to-reel recording, stacked neatly in a corner of the attic like relics waiting for the right moment to be found. Each was labeled in Elvis's unmistakable handwriting, Practice Sessions, 1976. But these weren't polished studio tracks meant for radio play or screaming audience. These were raw, unfiltered, deeply personal recording. A man alone with his thoughts, a tape machine, and a heart heavy with things left unsaid. As the archivists threaded the first tape through an ancient player, the room fell silent. What poured through the speakers wasn't the swaggering king of rock and roll the world knew. It was a man chasing something, perhaps peace, perhaps answers. He drifted effortlessly between gospel hymns, blues riffs, and even experimental takes with eerie, early electronic effects. It was Elvis, stripped of pretense, exploring sounds no one ever knew he touched. And then came the one that stopped everyone cold, Unchained Melody. No instruments, no backup singers, just his voice. And it wasn't the booming, electrifying vocal that filled stadiums. It was fragile, cracked, and trembling. The sound of a man staring down his own mortality. Every word, every breath carried the weight of a lifetime. Seasoned archivists, people who'd handled tapes from legends for decades, admitted they had to wipe their eyes. It wasn't a performance, it was a confession. A quiet farewell in song, recorded in the shadows, never meant for public ears. And yet, it was perhaps the most honest thing Elvis Presley ever left behind. They also uncovered scribbled lyrics on napkins, hotel stationery, and notebook pages, alternate versions of famous songs and incomplete works. A haunting pile of unopened fan letters, many pleading with Elvis to take care of his health, sat unread. One from 1976 begging him to rest. Since that astonishing day in 2025, Graceland has entered a new era of mystery. What else is hidden within its walls? Did Elvis truly die on August 16, 1977? The conspiracy theories persist, fueled by oddities like the misspelled middle name on his gravestone, or the fact his coffin reportedly weighed 900 pounds, far heavier than necessary. From tales of a man named John Burroughs buying a plane ticket to Argentina the night of his death, to Burger King sightings in Kalamazoo, Elvis's shadow continues to stretch across decades. Even Presley family members have walked a fine line. Too much denial, and it seems like a cover-up. Too much silence, and rumors thrive. The 2024 Graceland auction scandal only deepened the intrigue. A previously unknown company tried to seize Graceland, claiming Riley Keough had defaulted on a $3.8 million loan. Signatures were forged, legal papers falsified. Riley's team rushed to court, and a Tennessee judge blocked the sale, declaring Graceland a one-of-a-kind cultural asset. Most chilling of all, no representative from Nosani Investments appeared in court. They vanished as quickly as they had emerged, leaving behind only questions. In 2018, Elvis Presley was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, one of America's highest civilian honors. It was a fitting, if belated, recognition for a man who reshaped popular music and left an indelible mark on the world's cultural landscape. Fans and historians alike hailed it as the final chapter in the King's official story, a ceremonial closing of the book on a larger-than-life legend. But little did anyone know that honor was just the prelude to an even deeper, more intimate legacy waiting to be unearthed. Because Elvis's true story wasn't sealed in bronze statues or platinum records, it was buried in those dusty attic boxes, packed away in brittle manila envelopes, and spooled onto forgotten reel-to-reel tapes. There, in his own shaky handwriting, were scribbled prayers, unfinished lyrics, and personal letters never sent. There were old family Bibles with pages dog-eared and underlined, notes to himself asking life's hardest questions, and heartbreaking confessions scrawled in the margins of self-help books. These items paint a portrait of a man not just adored by millions, but also deeply lonely, wrestling with fame, mortality, and faith. A man desperate to hold on to the ordinary pieces of his life: childhood toys, high school yearbooks, fan letters unopened on dusty shelves. It's a reminder that behind the dazzling lights and iconic stage jumpsuits was a fragile soul searching for meaning. And now, as archivists meticulously document each discovery, one truth has become undeniable. Elvis Presley's story isn't finished. The king may be gone, but the man, with all his flaws, fears, and fleeting moments of grace, is finally starting to reveal himself, and the world is listening.